Good morning, grain traders. Welcome to today's Grain Blast with myself and the goddess of grain herself, Angie Setzer. It is, what day is it? It's Tuesday, the 2nd
I almost said Thursday.
of God. This is, as usual, an apt time to remind people that these are recorded live. There's absolutely no editing that goes involved. Long-time listeners will be very aware of that fact. Just a reminder, as usual, the Grain Blast, Angie will be giving us a rapid roundup of the latest pricing flows and market moving news in grain markets. I'm sitting here just because comedy effect, really. I think, we cover all brows of a kind of intellect. I cover the low brow, Angie covers the high brow.
If I cover the eyebrow, we're screwed.
I didn't say how high, but yeah.
High to you is pretty,
Wow. Okay, so I'm pretty short. Get over it. As usual, nothing discussed on this podcast is trading or investment advice. Nothing is an endorsement. Although I am going to start with one endorsement because I promised him a shout out. My dear friend Nicholas Barker at CME Group. He's going to be he's tuning in. He's going to tell everyone how great the show is. So, hello, Nicholas. There you go. Send me a pint. Thank you very much. But anyway, Andy, my love, what is going on?
Yeah, well, I wrote in my notes to start this morning, and at the end, I just kind of wrote clear as mud, underlined. So you're welcome. That's where we're at right now. We've got a lot of things happening that are kind of macro oriented
Yes.
more than anything, I would say, or big picture oriented, with Russia being the biggest one. My attention last night was immediately drawn to what was the fourth Russian tanker attacked in the Black Sea.
You know what? And I promise listeners, me and Andy don't discuss what we're going to talk about at all. It's as much a surprise to me as it is everyone else. But top of my list of things, in case I need to say something, is another attack on a Russian tanker.
Yes. So what's most interesting about this one, it's two things. First off, this was carrying sunflower oil. So it wasn't oil, crude, whatever. It wasn't, one of those things that we have seen somewhat targeted. And it was right off the coast of Turkey.
Yep.
So that's two things right there. Third thing, though, that is of interest is Ukraine is denying that they were a part of this specific attack. And so to me, I was like, whoa, that's a big escalation that we're now targeting what could potentially something hauling foodstuffs. But now that, they're kind of like, well, this wasn't us, it still brings to question. And we still are seeing, because like I said, this is the fourth tanker attack in the Black Sea in the last week. And it's been kind of a crude centric sort of thing. It seems I'm not an energy trader.
At least fuel oil and stuff like that.
Yeah.
This is, I'm kind of just hoping that they didn't, they heard it was carrying oil and didn't, they forgot to check which type of oil. Then when they realized it was food stuff, they're like, oh, it wasn't us.
Oops, our bad. We didn't do it, but it was several drones. No one was hurt. They're heading under their own power to Turkey, and the Turkish president, yes, is like, hey, you guys, like, we've got to make sure that the Black Sea is able to be navigable.
Yeah.
Navigable. That's a fun word to say.
Good word.
And so, but this is a point of interest simply because there are a few things happening that we're seeing in Russia on the grain side, that are going to capture attention and are part of why you're seeing, wheat kind of stay under pressure. Like there's a lot of talk of really cheap Russian wheat, really plentiful Russian wheat right now. So you are seeing a lot of exporters kind of offering into the global market really cheap supplies, but we're also seeing the war risk premium on the rise. We're also seeing, like real struggle with, do we really want, is it cheap enough that it's worth risking? Is it cheap enough that if we can't get to it in another 2 months and we have to cover our short because the market structure has changed entirely, is it worth booking? And so I do think you are going to continue to hear about cheap Russian supplies getting cheaper, getting more plentiful because they're backing up. Like it's taken them forever to get to the point.
Yes. So obviously, and we do often I love to mention, futures for show, cash for dough, obviously, because as you said, they're completely different animals. If you are, a physical trader on this front, and you're saying you are, like you said, you are taking a risk on the cheaper wheat.
Yes.
But at the saying that, the reason it's cheaper is because you've got that, deliverable risk or the lack of delivery. How does that work? And again, obviously, this is completely new to me. This is why I've got you being the intelligent one on the show. I'm assuming there's insurances and stuff you can take out and insurance policies, or is that how it works? Or is it like, what is the risk at play?
Yeah, your insurance on physical risk would be simply kind of having some other supplies purchased to cover your shortfall if there was one. in this instance here, like, is there insurance you could put an option strategy
I
on in
was
a
going
way
to
to
say
help protect you against
exactly
futures?
what I was thinking. Yeah, rather than going to Lloyd's of London and trying to get an insurance premium, you would just do some kind of options trade on the
You do
physical.
options, like, because if you weren't able to access those supplies, it would be bullish the market. So realistically speaking, you would be able to kind of offset some of that risk, but not all of it, because you could see basis go straight up your nose. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
and so that's one of those things that it's part of what I'm watching, and part of why I think you're going to see Russian wheat plentifully offered, because they need to generate cash too. Remember,
yeah,
like, they aren't generating cash right now with crude, with oil, and all of the other things, the energy exports that they've had. And so that's what we're watching. You're going to hear more and more of that. You're also going to be hearing on the wheat front. This is kind of why wheat has it a little hard right now, but it's almost feeling like it's, I don't want to say the last bearish input, because wheat can always find another bearish input. It's wheat,
yeah.
yeah. But
Well, as I even called it on to this morning's morning blast with our friend Michael Brown, I still refer to it as the ginger stepchild of the agricultural markets.
100%. But the one beauty part about wheat is eventually it's gonna just blow the doors off the market. It tends to do it once every, so many years or so. I'm not
Once a
saying it's going to
decade.
happen this year. I'm just saying there will be one time where everyone will be like, holy crap, did you see what we did? But, that's what we're watching right now is we do have big crops coming off Argentina, Australia, both Argentina's, a massive record crop by like 7 million metric tons. You know what I mean? Like, they're adding another 250 million bushels to their former record. But now a lot of folks are talking about quality issues potentially, which is usually the case. If you get a lot of wheat, it's very hard to get a lot of good quality wheat. That's why we hate wheat, but love it at the same time. And so Australia's got a big crop. And so that's part of why you're seeing wheat under pressure currently is, like I said, cheaper Russian supplies being offered into the market. And there's a lot of talk right now where it's going to be Russia and Argentina supplying the global market of wheat here over the next few months. And I don't know about you, but if I were an end user, that would make me feel warm and fuzzy, because both are logistical powerhouses. That is sarcasm. But we'll see, kind of how this all works out, simply because we got to watch cash. Like, you're seeing US cash markets, at least at the Gulf, invert. And this is kind of, I've ended up talking about wheat today for some reason. And you are seeing basis from elsewhere, around Europe and some other things. And so there's a lot of talk of more than enough supply in the wheat market. And, obviously, the thought that Russia is going to offer cheap, Argentina is going to offer cheap, this, that, and the other thing. But we're still seeing folks come to the US because they can source the highest quality, readily available, easily to access, logistically supplies. And so, yeah, there's a few things that we're watching there, and this kind of butterfly affected off from the Russia conversation. So I apologize. But, it's all going to be important. Do we see peace talks? We've got Witkoff and Kushner. Jared's back. Did you notice that? Like, he's suddenly over the last couple of
I
months.
completely missed that.
Yeah, Kushner's back. Guess who's back again? Jared's back. So he's helping with the negotiations. You are seeing them go to Russia today to meet with Putin, probably to take back the 19-point plan. What does this look like? What is the land swap? No one's really leaked that yet. I imagine we'll probably see that today. Like, what is the new plan, the post-Florida meeting plan, and how does Russia respond to it? That's obviously going to have some important effects, because this fourth tanker attack, this increase in, and, this escalation of attacks on infrastructure by both parties, all of these things, like how the next couple of days go with peace talks, you're either going to see an escalation or you're going to see a slowdown. And all of this conversation I just had about wheat kind of nested in that,
Yeah.
is going to become more important, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely.
So that's going to be the biggest thing that we're watching right now. We did see China announce overnight that they are going to facilitate that big, important, export control thing, the rare earth magnets.
Yeah, but also, so bit weird on. So not only are they streamlining the process, but also apparently Chinese exporters of these rare earth magnets. Not that I know how magnets work, but it's all magic to me. But
they stick together unless you put them on opposite poles, and then they force them. No, that's different, I think.
It's something like that. But apparently, I didn't know you could do this, but apparently they're mixing up, or they're switching up basically the ingredients that go into some of these rare earth magnets to make it easier to ship them, and making it easier to get around these export controls as well.
Dang.
There you go. Bit of science, man. Bit of science.
I like it. I like science, and that, so this is a point of interest too, because there is one company that just basically has access to all customers. They can ship to all of their customers. Now they said, like, basically it looks somewhat uninfringed. And so that's another facilitation or another sign that we had some type of agreement and that both parties or at least China
China.
is following through, on what the administration has said they would. Right now, they're about 35% purchased on soybeans. There was a lot of talk that it'd be by year end. If it's happening, it's happening behind the scenes, and so
Yeah.
that's been part of the reason that some folks are a little bit kind of bummed, you could say, is because we aren't getting the flash sales that a lot of, like that we should. If we're selling 4 million metric ton of soybeans, a lot of folks think we should be seeing flash sales and things like that. And this has been a gripe of mine for a minute. There's different rules and different ways that they have to kind of follow to report these things. And so we'll start to watch to see if the loadings pick up and what that all looks like. Everyone's saying that, a lot of China's shipments of the purchases that they have will happen December, January, but they're not going to be able to ship everything in that stretch of time. And so we'll be watching to see if they step in and kind of continue to buy. The administration had said we were going to get a deal announced this week, but we haven't seen one. And we're also supposed to get a farmer bailout package announced this week, but we haven't seen one. And so lastly, we'll just be kind of watching domestic values, spreads and basis and kind of what all is happening in different places here. It's interesting to know, we talked about it yesterday, like you had that commitment of traders report that came out last week that showed that the commercial was exceptionally long, comparatively speaking, especially for the middle of October. And so there's something that we'll kind of continue to watch is just what level of demand are we seeing and what kind of commercial ownership do we have? Currently we have, good coverage. We got a good rally ahead of that USDA report in November, a couple weeks ago, that really provided a lot of my customers the ability to sell what they needed to sell for movement December into January timeframe. And so now we're in show me the money. Like if you want me to turn a wheel right now in the month of December, before Christmas or whatever, you're gonna have to pay me a lot more than what you're currently offering. And so it's a little bit of a standoff. We'll see who needs what more. Farmer movement always picks up in January. And so for a lot of end users, they're kind of just betting on the come to a certain extent, though there are several different places out there that are allowing early delivery of contracts that are, free DP, pushing basis in the east side of the Corn Belt and some other things. And so we'll continue to watch how December plays out. Harvest is pretty much wrapped up finally everywhere. What's been put away is put away. Freight is kind of hard to get, rail freight in the West, especially. And so that's going to send some weird signals to the market just simply because there might be demand, but our pipeline might be full.
Right.
And so just overall, things are going to remain supported, but range bound, in my opinion. And we'll just kind of wait to see if there's any developments with the Russia-Ukraine situation. And then, of course, what's going on with if we get that official China trade deal, or if we see a continuation of purchases now that everyone's back from the holiday and some of these other things. Oh, one final thing. Brazil weather does look like it's improving a little bit. We do have some problems there. We have seen some talk of production trimming happening early for both corn and soybeans. If the weather does kind of straighten itself out, you should see thoughts stabilize. But it's definitely something to watch because there's a lot of replanting going on in certain spots that should impact or could impact safrinha. And so there has, I think, been a little underlying risk premium added to this market because of that. And so if weather does sort itself out here, December is a very important month. Don't be surprised if we could see some softness in this thing. But again, we're stuck into the end of the year, I think. I think that covers it. I'll shut up now.
Well, I could listen to you chat all day, my dear friend. But Andy, thank you so much for the update. Listeners, thank you as always. Whatever you're doing today, keep it tight, stay safe, and we'll see you all tomorrow. Much love.